Yes, I am here. And you're lucky to be here too, after all the absurd things you've done since you've left home. I think I made that joke in another video. Hi. It's me, Nick. How's everyone going? First of all, sorry if my voice sounds a bit stuffed. I've got a touch of the spicy flu, don't tell anyone. But yes, it's good to be back. Good to talk to everyone again. Wish it was under better circumstances, but whatever. Now, I won't spend too long going over the housekeeping stuff before we get stuck into this stuff. I know everyone wants to hear like what happened, opinions, blah, blah, blah. That's why people click on these videos. But just a couple of housekeeping things first. First of all, yes, I'm back after a long time. I'll talk about why that is and what's been going on in a separate video. I'd like to also mention that, yes, there has been a lot of positivity to come out of these recent events in the form of the various X-Wing groups, Discord channels, Facebook groups, whatever. I'm not going to spend a lot of time in this video highlighting them and what they're doing right now. Not because I don't think they're important. They're very important. But I want to focus on them in separate videos. I want to give them the actual limelight and sort of keep those very positive elements away from this very negative subject through the space of separate videos, if you will. This is Nick from the future, because Nick from the past, which you were just watching, forgot to mention that his Discord is now free for anyone to use. Yes, I'll talk about this in a separate video, but I have closed my paid tiers of my Patreon, and I've made my Discord accessible by everyone. No longer have to support me on the Patreon. Considering how inconsistent my videos have been, I'm not going to use that platform anymore until I can find a way to make that work fairly with the community. So please, come over to my Discord. It's a great fun time. We have a good little community there. They're awesome guys. If you like what I do, you'll like them. Chatting about all things X-Wing, some other tabletop games as well. I've got some ideas about other stuff I want to do for the channel, and that'll be discussed there as well. Just be aware that I'm not in charge of any sort of official rules set for the X-Wing community going forward. So while we'll be discussing those things there, don't come to my Discord and go, oh, this is how I think X-Wing should be played from now on. There are better Discords for that. Unless you just want to have a rant, that's fine. Yeah, whatever. As long as you're cool about it, as long as you're cool to us, to each other, and to people in general, you're welcome to come hang out. All right, back to our regular scheduled video. This is also on the back of a few other content creators already commenting on this whole situation. So yes, I'm inevitably going to parody a lot of their talking points because I do tend to agree with a lot of them. Specifically, recently, Crabbok and Sith Takers. Crabbok on YouTube and Sith Takers on their podcast. I pretty much agree with them for most parts. Spoiler alert. Perhaps I tend to be a little bit more polite about a few things, but that's fine. We all have our own way of sort of processing this kind of information and moving forward with it. That's fine. There's been some other content creators I've watched that I don't fully agree with, but I'm not going to call out anyone specifically. I'm not trying to stir up drama or accuse anyone of anything. It's fine. People are entitled to their opinions. But most importantly, and this subject's going to come up while we discuss what's happened over the course of AMG being the custodians of X-Wing, no matter what happens with a company or a community, a game, whatever, do not abuse people. Just full stop, do not abuse people. There is no excuse for that. There is no situation where that is okay. The reason for me bringing that up will become apparent as we go through these talking points, but suffice to say, I don't think I should have to say that, but at the same time, we're in a very large, diverse community. It's very easy for one person to sort of get angry at something and the next person to do the same, but not understand the nuance it takes to actually talk about this stuff properly and constructively, and it just takes one person who doesn't quite have the social skills to do something really stupid and suddenly the whole community looks bad. So I think it's important as people discussing these things that we say that off the bat. So without further ado, let's actually talk about what happened. You probably all know this by now. Feel free to skip the next couple of minutes of the video. I will not be offended by that. But if you are not aware, AMG announced this on their webpage just the other day. After long and careful consideration, we are here today to announce the end of development of Star Wars X-Wing and Star Wars Armada. We are grateful for the community's passion, engagement and support. Over the past few years, rising production costs, global manufacturing and pandemic-related challenges have made it increasingly difficult to produce high-quality, pre-painted miniatures, which ultimately led to the decision to end development. Although development is ending, we are not stepping away from these games entirely. Atomic Mass Games will continue to support tournaments and organise play for both games, with OP kits to be found at your local shops, culminating with an Open World Championship at Adepticon March 2025. Thank you for your continued support and dedication. Now, that last bit regarding OP support up to 2025, it's kind of vague whether they mean up to and beyond. It's made more confusing by this statement by Asmodee saying that this OP season leading up to that is like a farewell tour for Star Wars games, like Star Wars starfighting. It's very strange and very vague, and my assumption is they'll support OP till Adepticon. That's pretty much what my takeaway is from that. So yes, we are now in a situation where we have no more official development of X-Wing or Armada. It's worth bringing that up, and I'm not really the expert on Armada. I will say if you want a better take on Armada, go watch Crabbok's video. But suffice to say, I pretty much agree with they're ending development on Armada. What development on Armada? What are you talking about? But anyway, I kind of want to look at this whole situation on how AMG has treated X-Wing and sort of just break it down into different categories, because a lot of the commentary I'm seeing on this is getting a bit muddy because people are using very emotional arguments and sort of intermingling that with business arguments and that kind of thing, and it gets really confusing when you start to do that. And I actually want to separate those two things out. Let's discuss this as what this means for them as a business and what this means for them as, like, from a more moral standpoint, where they're, the figurehead custodians of this community. How altruistic have their actions been, I guess. And I know they're a corporation. They're not really, that's not part of their goal to be altruistic, but we can still criticize them for not being so, and I think we should, frankly. So let's talk about AMG being the custodians of X-Wing as from a business standpoint. And the point I really want to drive home with all of this, with this whole ultimate failing of this property, is that it strikes me very much as a failure of management. When I say that, I mean it's very hard to sort of point the finger at any individuals and say, you're the one that stuffed this up. I know people have been, but people are frustrated. That's what people do when they're angry. They find a target for their anger. And this is all about the way the brand has been portrayed, communicated, the product portfolio, how that's grown. It's failing on all these management levels. And at the end of the day, the people in charge of this kind of things, the groups that we really need to be sort of getting answers from, is the go-between between AMG and Asmodee, their representation to the company at large, and the leadership at AMG. Those are the two parties that have ultimately failed here, not the game devs. If we have a look at the products they've released individually, these pilot packs, the reprints, they've been okay, but ultimately these are all actually pretty good products. It's the fact that we haven't seen a new ship developed under AMG. And I know they had their business reasons for doing that, but it sucks. It doesn't really help us, the consumers. They had a responsibility to grow this product in terms of its take within the tabletop community space, in terms of how it can grow financially. And it was very clear, anyone really looking at it with any kind of scrutiny saw that this product was being developed basically on life support. Pilot packs and packs with existing ships but different pilots are fine. They worked well, especially in X-Wing First and Second Edition. I'd say actually, especially in X-Wing First Edition where we couldn't change points. These were obviously always successful products for FFG. And I think part of what this is, if I'm going to put my sort of single cap on here, is AMG perhaps looked at that and said, hey, that has a low cost of development. We can do this. And look how successful those products are. Those products, which they don't have to develop new ships for, are more successful than new ships. Like, it's crazy. So much less work, so much more profit. What they didn't perhaps realize is that works alongside the release of new ships. It's supplementary to each other. The portfolio as a whole helps drive the individual products, but they just saw each one of these as a cash cow. Speculatively speaking, I don't know that for sure. It just seems that way based on what we've had released. It looks like high upside product for the company, but not really understanding that supplementary products and products that help support the game are really what drives the whole thing forward. It's like how recently they got rid of the conversion packs, for example. They weren't big money makers. And I know what to say back then, and I'll say it now instead. It's very short-sighted to do something like that, because the value in the conversion packs is not so much the profit. It's the longevity you offer the game. It's the fact that you offer consumers the way to access your game. If you look at that product and go, it's not making us much money, kill it, and that stops people from buying into your game, you've missed the point of that product. It's just these very short-sighted decisions in terms of the whole portfolio. It's rough. It's rough. And in terms of the way that sort of instills consumer confidence, well, it just doesn't instill consumer confidence. That alongside the whole issue of communication. These two things, consumer confidence and communication, really go hand in hand. Communication is also important with the head company as well, but let's just talk about, how it relates to us, the consumers, first. Now, I'm not super familiar with the situation, so I'm just going to sort of comment on my understanding of what I've heard from others, and just talk about this stuff speculatively, but with no authority, because I really can't. But really, that's all I've ever done on this channel. Hey, so early on in the days of X-Wing with AMG, they communicated quite well, and then there was a time where they started to fiddle with some of the rules and some of the design space, and that got fans quite angry. As I said before, not everyone here in the community is good at communicating that in a mature way necessarily, and there were some instances of abuse. Now, as I said, that is no situation does causes them to deserve that, and I will say AMG could do all kinds of things to X-Wing, but I would never say that that's okay. It's very important that we understand, and as a community, we stamp that out. If anyone here watching this video thinks it's okay to abuse someone because they changed the rules in your game, leave the X-Wing community right now. We don't want you. That situation happened back then, and it's sort of speculated that that's what caused them to communicate less and less and less. Now, I don't know that for sure. I'm not that familiar with the situation. I'm sorry. I just don't know. But if that's the case, I'm not trying to justify anything before anyone jumps down my throat about what I'm to say here. The problem with this whole situation, and this is why I'm trying to discuss it as a business decision, it doesn't matter why you choose to lessen communication. You're going to suffer business consequences for that decision regardless, even if you are moralistically right to do so. I hope that made sense. Basically, what I'm saying is, yes, obviously for people's well-being, they may have chosen to communicate less and less and less. It may have been a very good thing for the mental well-being of their employees, which I fully support. But they still had to find a way to navigate that and still communicate with their product, because at the end of the day, the bottom line doesn't care why you stop communicating, because this is what happens to a business when they do that kind of thing. And I just think a well-organized company can navigate that, maybe find a team that's more capable of doing this kind of things and dealing with that kind of criticism. Not that anyone should have to deal with abuse. I'm not suggesting that. It's this weird situation where they sort of just take everything and walk away and just cross their arms and go, well, we're not going to talk to you anymore. And that doesn't help anyone. At the end of the day, there's plenty of us who didn't do bad cooked stuff to anyone at AMG, and we just want to chill out and play the game, and we're sort of being punished for this, and that kind of sucks. The whole situation kind of sucks. And at the end of the day, there's so many consequences for not communicating, apart from, not taking on feedback, not actually listening to us, and doing the kinds of things to the game that we actually asked for, and doing completely unrelated things that we didn't ask for, and kind of make us angry, because there was a feeling that AMG's design team was sort of stubbornly pushing forward on things that most people weren't really jiving with, and ended up pushing the community away. But there's also the factor of, if you're not communicating correctly to your community, if you're not communicating efficiently to your community, when rumors start to pop up about what certain AMG employees say at conventions, trade shows, etc., usually someone like me who comments on the games that I like to play would not take much notice of those. But because we're not getting any official communication, that's kind of the only picture of your company and your attitudes of the game that we end up getting. And we sort of let that colour the story more than we really should. And that's kind of the stories we were hearing. I'm not going to comment on any specific thing I've heard about any specific person. Again, I don't really want to indict any individual because I don't want abuse to come off the back of this video. But the sheer indifference and disdain for miniatures that are pre-painted for this game and Armada in general was kind of pretty clear. Maybe disdain's a bit of a harsh word, but again, when you sort of like, in a way, talk behind the game's back, you don't have official statements on your website. There's basically radio silence. It's kind of what it feels like. It feels like it's a jaded lover, as weird as that sounds. And it doesn't instill community confidence. It just gives a really bad image of the company. It doesn't feel professional. When we start to analyze the reasoning that's been given as to why they stopped developing X-Wing, and they talk about cost-related issues and this kind of stuff, it's just so easy for us to go, guys, you didn't want this. You didn't want to develop X-Wing. Just be honest. Just admit it. And I wish it wasn't so easy to say that. Like, it kind of sucks that I'm commenting on this schoolyard nonsense, but I am, and I kind of feel like I have to. This situation is just so weird. There's also the factor of how you communicate with your business partners, and I'm talking about the relationship between AMG and Asmodee now. So Asmodee, if you're not aware, is the parent company that originally bought FFG, the original creators of X-Wing. And after that happened, they decided to make AMG this new sort of specialist mini company and give the Star Wars license to them. There's a bit of speculation as to why that was. It was something to do with, like, they wanted the Star Wars license so they could make Shatterpoint, and there was some miscommunication. They ended up getting all of the Star Wars games, but they didn't want them. It's a whole thing. I'm not going to... I don't know the answer as to what actually happened, so I'm not even going to try and comment on that, but it sounds terrible no matter which way you spin it. When we're talking about, like, allocating resources, communicating with your parent company, getting lumped with 2, possibly 3 games from another company that your company doesn't want and actively doesn't have the resources to develop, there's a serious lack of communication that's happened there. They went in too deep on this shifting of licenses, and it doesn't make any sense. Like, there's a real, again, it's a failure of management. I'm actually confused by the whole situation. And I know people are going to be in the comments below saying, oh, like, well, I know this person, they told me this. I'm not going to comment on conjecture, secondhand stories. I I always try and build everything I chat about on the channel with official information that we get. And up until now, that's been pretty easy. But in this situation, you know. Hi everyone, this is Nick again during the editing of this video. I forgot a point in regards to AMG's business decisions in the way they handled X-Wing. Part of their statement pointed out that they cite rising costs in producing pre-painted miniatures, which myself and a lot of other content creators are sort of speculating is a bit of a deflection, if you will, if I'm going to put it nicely. Just having a look at this here product in front of us. This is Star Trek Into the Unknown. Now, I'm not a Star Trek fan myself. This isn't a game I want to cover on the channel or anything. But if we take a look at this, we'll notice something here. There's a familiar name on the front of the box. Oh, Maxie Brooke right here. Yes, Max Brooke and Alex Davey had a large hand in creating this. I believe Alex is actually head of the department while this was under development. He's actually left WizKids at this point, so maybe he was taken off the box for some reason. I don't know. I'm not going to speculate on why that is. I'm just pointing out that 2/3 of the original X-Wing dev team basically moved to a different company that it's sort of stated outright that they did it specifically because of their expertise in developing X-Wing and Armada. And yeah, Asmodee, this is what happens when you throw away obscene talent. Actually, I want to point out as well, when this whole thing was happening, when AMG originally got the license for X-Wing and the other games originally, it was the fact that Alex Davey was fired. That was the first massive red flag for me, and I remember making the video back then, and that was the moment where I actually paused and thought, oh, okay. A game shifting between companies is whatever, but the fact that they fired this insanely talented person, if you've ever heard him speak about the X-Wing design back in the day, just really awesome talent, and it's good to see that they're getting work, that's all I'll say. But apart from all of that, apart from just AMG and Asmodee not realizing what they have in terms of their human resource talent, this is a game releasing for $150 US with a bunch of pre-painted miniatures. Doesn't seem like a crazy price, doesn't seem like WizKids are struggling to get this one out, so it's a bit suspect. I mean, maybe they're taking a bit of a loss on the core set just to get people in. I don't think that would be a very sustainable idea, because they just end up losing money ultimately, but still kind of adds to our overall suspicion that maybe AMG aren't really being that truthful when they cite, manufacturing, quote-unquote COVID costs as the primary source. I can't say this for sure. Maybe there's some kind of special deal WizKids have. It just, at this point in time, I'm not inclined to give AMG the benefit of the doubt, so I'm not going to. Anyway, this game looks pretty good anyway, so good luck with that, WizKids. So yes, to summarise, as a business, they have been sloppy, unprofessional, and in terms of, actually doing their job, developing games, well, put it this way, they've created 2 games so far as a company, and they've killed 2 games as a company. So they're a games company that over the course of 4 years has created a net of 0 games, which is that's something. Let's talk about the other part of all of this. AMG's responsibility being the figurehead custodians of X-Wing and Armada. And when I say figurehead custodians of our community, I mean figurehead in terms of they are de facto, because they are the ones that make the game. The real sort of leaders and custodians of our community is prominent figures within the community, people not financially involved with producing and selling the game. But that's why I use the term figurehead, in case there was any confusion there. Basically, your role as communication with the X-Wing community is to be a champion of this game. That's not possible if you're not talking to us. It's not possible if you're not prioritizing resources to it. It's not possible if you're not prioritizing products to it. Need I say more? It's very clear that they produced the lowest effort things possible just to keep the portfolio just ticking over enough. and that doesn't make us feel like you care about the game. You know, all the stories about what their employees have said at various instances, but aside, if we just look at the portfolio release of X-Wing over the past few years, it doesn't look like they're excited about the game. So why should we be? Another part of this, while we're talking about allocating resources, is give us the best chances of succeeding in building the community. Part of that's through releasing a product, and we've spoken about that ad nauseum at this point, but also in the actions of the company and how they support OP and that kind of stuff. And look, I know that was shaky to begin with, and I don't blame a brand new company for struggling with that kind of thing. But at the same time, these are not inexperienced people in terms of how long they've been in the industry, and you know, they were sort of built as a specialist company. They weren't built to be a company that was learning, so to speak. That's not the impression I get anyway. I don't know what Asmodee's reasoning was. I don't work for Asmodee, thank God. And I look at the actions, especially around OP and, you know, cancelling worlds and bringing worlds back, and the whole thing with the grand tournaments and all the miscommunication with that. It's clear that they were trying to work out when to cancel this stuff. And, apart from all of that, being Australian as well, a lot of people watching this might not realise, we had our GTs only announced a few days ago. A day before, they told us that they were stopping development on X-Wing and Armada. Great. Very helpful for the people that just got a GT announced for them. It's not like these people don't need all the support they can get. I'm sure they are very grateful for all of this. That was all sarcasm, by the way. I know it's very hard to convey sarcasm over the internet, even in video form. And the whole thing with the timing with the GTs and all of that, this weird situation is, several days ago before the announcement, they took all the stock out of stock on Asmodee's website, assuming, you know, it's going to go to a liquidator or something like that, or we'll see what happens with that. Keep an eye on Amazon and eBay and all those kinds of things. You never know. There might be some good deals out there. They did that sort of in between these GT announcements, and we knew it meant something. It either means like they're going to announce a big overhaul or they're killing it. It's pretty much guaranteed to be one of those things. And my thought was, surely they're not going to announce they're killing the game as they're announcing GTs. No, the crazy bastards, they did it. It's something. It's not... I'm actually speechless in the whole situation. And if I'm laughing, it's because I'm not actually that concerned about the game at this point. It's more that the situation is actually kind of crazy. And the frustrating part about, of course, seeing all the stuff go out of stock online, and Asmodee after the point saying, oh, you know, we've still got some little bit of stuff in stock, and not being sure about the length of OP moving forward in the future. We know it'll be going to at least up until World 2025. I would assume that's going to be it, but it might be longer. We don't really know for sure. If you're going to support the game until Adepticon 2025, can you at least have some stock? I mean, to be fair, local supply is actually pretty good. Here in Australia, there's actually a decent amount of first edition stuff you can still get because it's just sitting in a warehouse at the suppliers. I might actually start chatting to some of the local retailers and see if we can access some of that stock on clearance. That might be pretty good for the game moving forward. Food for thought. It's about AMG giving us the tools to sort of do what we can. At the very least. I know it doesn't benefit them in any way from a business standpoint, but they must have known that when they announced this, we would start to look at the community and try and, you know, forge an effort to keep this game alive, and not even doing a little bit of reprints or, you know, gutting the stock before telling us it's dead. It's just a slap in the face at that point. It's awful. It's just awful. It sucks and it's awful and it's bad. And I'm not happy with AMG or Asmodee. again, I fall back on the point that this is about management. This is about AMG's leadership. This is about Asmodee's management of AMG. And as far as I'm concerned, both of those parties have failed spectacularly. These games both deserve way better, X-Wing and Armada. Now, before I close out this video, because as I said, I wanted to separate out the negativity from the positivity, which I'll talk about in the next few videos I make, but I wanted to say something quite unequivocally at this point. I have not felt better about the game and its future in years. And I know that's an insane thing to say after everything else I've just said, but I do not feel that AMG have been strong custodians of this game for a while now, and sort of since I last, made videos. And in the last few videos, I was talking about 2.5 and, the whole situation, and my whole take on 2.5 was, yeah, it's a good game, but it's just worse than the older versions of X-Wing. But more to the point, where we're talking about AMG's treatment of the game and their communication with the community, it's clear that that was a massive turning point. So there's been several points in X-Wing that have turned people off the game. That's fine. That's their prerogative. I'm not going to tell anyone they do or don't have to play the game. But you should try it if you haven't. And the fact that we have the freedom now to just go, okay, let's look at what AMG did and let's try and remedy this, actually gives me a lot of hope. And seriously, if you have not joined some of these communities, predominantly on the Discords for like X-Wing Legacy, all the different 2.0 projects, even the X-Wing the Miniature Game Discord, which is kind of like the official kind of OP kind of support thing. People are already talking about supporting 2.5 into the future on my own Discord. And if you're not aware of that kind of stuff, you may be under the very mistaken opinion that this game is dead. But if you spend any time on these platforms, in some ways, it almost doesn't feel like this announcement even happened. The way the community is kicking into overdrive, looking at ways to support this game going forward, is awesome. And one thing I will say with that, apart from, yes, go support those things, join those groups, join the discussion, do it now. Links in the description. I'll have relevant content creators in Discord. Let's go. Let's make this happen. We essentially have until Adepticon 2025 to sort of consolidate the way we want to do this. And considering how much we've already done in the past few days, I don't think it's going to be a challenge. And personally, considering how little I care about supporting X-Wing under AMG, I don't mind. Let's just start playing Legacy now. Stuff it. I'm very excited to play X-Wing Legacy, personally. I just want to say that I am no authority when it comes to picking a rule set. I will give my opinion on things, as I always have. But please don't start, yelling at people going, oh, Harry Nick said this. Harry Nick knows. He knows the way. We should be listening to Harry Nick. Especially with that really bad Australian accent. That'd be very embarrassing for everyone involved. So yes, please get involved with those things. Come to my Discord. We'll have a grand old chat about it. It will be great. In the meantime, thank you so much for watching. No Patreon. Just come hang out in the Discord. Come watch my videos. Subscribe, like, all that kind of stuff. And I will see you all in the next video. Woo, we're back!